Alright, welcome back to Unit 2, Day 12. Reminders to please have out your history notebook and you're taking notes as you move through the video. Make sure that you complete the vocabulary for this video, which will be on the next slide and down in the description. Let's go ahead and get started. So our key terms for today are going to be Benin, Oyo, Asante, and Dahomey, the Kongo, King Alfonso, Ndongo, Queen Ndingi, the Great Trek, and Vazco De Gama. Key concepts today are going to be political characteristics of Africa at the time of European exploration, areas left untouched by European exploration, and religious changes and continuities in modern Africa during the early modern period. So let's talk about Western Africa to go ahead and get started. Let's talk about the forest kingdoms. We have the Benin in southern Nigeria. This is going to be a hereditary central monarchy that's ruled through a royal court. It's going to expand into an all-out empire in what is modern-day Nigeria. People in cities formed a rudimentary class system with crafts and art guilds. But in Benin, the slave trade was never the most significant economic activity. Between 1500 and 1800, the kingdoms incorporated European mercantile and capitalist activities and began war to capture slaves to export to the Portuguese. Now, the Oyo, Asante, and Dahomey derived immense wealth from the slave trade. And they're going to trade with Europeans who are going to deal with these three empires the most. They're going to develop new forms of government, divine right monarchies, councils, bureaucracy, and arts, which they all get from interactions with the Europeans. Moving on to Central Africa, we have the Congo. This would be the most powerful Central African kingdom after the 14th century. They're going to establish diplomatic and commercial relations with Portugal in 1482. King Alfonso of the Congo is going to convert to Christianity in the 16th century. But the Portuguese will, even though the king converted to Catholicism, they're still going to conduct slave raids into the Congo. And King Alfonso is actually going to write to the Pope and be like, hey, I'm Catholic, you're taking Catholic people, and the Pope's going to ignore him. This deterioration will lead to war in 1665. Now, the kingdom of Ndongo in modern-day Angola attracted Portuguese slave traders and missionaries. Now, Queen Nzinga is going to lead a resistance against the Portuguese, and she's actually able to block Portuguese advances until about 1663. She could not kick them out entirely, and by the end of the 1600s or the 17th century, Ndongo was the Portuguese colony of Angola. This became a coffee plantation and sugar plantations, and they still conducted slave trade out of this region until the 1650s, and it will remain a European colony by Portugal until 1972. So there's a map of the big empires that you need to know. The Congo, Asante, Songhai, and Benin. This is a map of where these places are located. Let's talk about East Africa. In the Swahili city-states, of course, when the Vazco De Gama circumnavigated Africa, he's going to force these coastal cities to pay tribute to Portugal, especially Kilwa in 1502. The Swahili adjusted very well to the Portuguese and the Turks. Though trade was still disrupted by the Portuguese and Turks, still most gold, slaves, and ivory continued to the Middle East. But a portion of those slaves, a large portion of those slaves, went to the Middle East, but some of them did go to Brazil. Southern Africa, this is going to be the area least affected by the Atlantic slave trade. This is going to be dominated by regional kingdoms such as Zimbabwe and Central and Southern Africa. Now, after the 15th century, Europeans are really going to kind of argue and fight over this area. The Portuguese used it as a stopover to the Indian Ocean. The Dutch actually land in the Cape of Good Hope and set up colonies and attempt to kind of make it a full trading colony and settler colony. But by 1795, the British are going to take possession of this colony. And to escape the British, the Dutch are going to move north into southern Central Africa. This is known as the Great Trek. This is going to lead to far more problems in Central Southern Africa. Now, for Islam and Christianity in Africa, Islam was popular in West Africa and the Swahili city-states of East Africa. Most of the time, Islam blended with indigenous beliefs, and this created syncretic Islam. Now, Monophysite Christianity still exists in Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia. Roman Catholic Christianity reached sub-Saharan Africa through the Portuguese and Angola and the Congo. But at the same time, they're also going to become syncretized and create syncretic religions in these areas as well. The Dutch Reformed Church as well as the Anglican English Church are going to establish with settlers in South Africa. Still during this time, the majority of Africa will still be animistic and shamanistic in their beliefs, but we do see the kind of influence of these outside religions really start to take their toll and really start to take the kind of destruction of these indigenous cultures. So that's where we're going to end for today. Please make sure that you are following along in your notebook and you complete the vocabulary for this video as well. Thank you guys, and I'll see you guys in class.